Well, here we go again. It's Monday afternoon. I thought I'd try and keep myself going with yet another video recording. I daren't tackle the live ones yet, I'm not up for that. There's lots to catch up on, and I thought, well, if we're going to try and do this every week, perhaps we ought to get into a routine and discuss different subjects every week. I thought perhaps tackle the subject of what is mental health disability, and to start with, share my own story of the mental health illness, what's caused it, what's behind it, and why it's taking so long to recover. In fact, why, some parts of it may take the rest of my life to recover. I can hear that because it's a lovely day and the windows open, most of the cats are trundling around, so I'm expecting any time that we'll eventually get a cat to come and join us, but something to look forward to therefore is a live recording. I have got some bits and pieces printed out for me to look at because my memory's not brilliant. I've kept everything on file in folders for the last 5 years, of everything before, during and after, because eventually I do plan to write a book. I'm actually working on at the moment. I've done, as I said, about 300,000 words, and hopefully this will be out by next spring or even summer, and it's going to be one of the fundraising projects for mental health, and I'm hoping it's going to raise a lot of money for community projects, but we'll see. I've got to write it first. I did this summary, which you won't be able to read, but I can talk you through some of this about what my life was like before and after. And I think it's just this once, it's good to compare and look at how life was, what happened, and how life is now, because so many people I know, have reached high spots and then hit this brick wall and crashed. And it's not just a matter of them crashing, it's like the brick wall fell on top of them as well. I'll try and do as much as I can from memory as well, but funny enough, in looking back, I realised that I started working for mental health when I was about 7 years old, and it's going through all the memories with Mum when I was talking to her about my dad and what he went through, and getting all my notes together for the book. And the memories, I thought, wow, I forgot about that. I remember doing Penny for the Guy when I was about 7 years old for mental health disability, and I had built this enormous Guy Fawkes in the front garden, which must have been 8-10 foot high. And I collected all day, and this, we collected a bit, and it was a bit of fun, and I guess I enjoyed, I was quite proud of what I did. It was even then a reflection of what people like. 99% of people walk by and say well done and throw the old pennies into the bucket, and then you get the nasty kids come along and laugh and throw fireworks at you. And nothing much has changed in these days, has it really? People still support, people still criticise. The next year I thought I'd do a garden sale. That went down quite well, until eventually, I think by the time I was 13, we did this enormous bring and buy garden sale where everyone in the community had donated items, and we raised over £100, which back in those days, and we're going back to around the mid-70s, it was a lot of money. And again, it was from mental health disability. So those memories come flooding back. I'm not going to go through my entire life and career and everything else. I don't want to bore you silly, but despite qualifications in many other subjects, and I studied psychology and computer programming and God knows what else, and politics and business studies and more, I ended up following the love of my life, which was my music. I ended up on stage. I had a fantastic time working at a soul funk dance venue in the 70s when Case to Silver again was at its peak, and actually it still is, still attracting hundreds of thousands of people out, which is brilliant. I had some amazing years working for Mecca Leisure on the big stage with a lot of the big names and the big bands, and again, really, was a very steep learning curve. I worked all over the UK. I had 35 years on stage. During that time, I also worked in conservation. I studied an Open University degree in horticulture. I ran a major conservation wildlife environment project and designed the blueprints for a disability project based around that. I had my own conservation business for many years. I wrote 3 books. God knows where I found the time. Well, actually, I didn't, because I didn't have the time. I was working over 130 hours a week, and it was insane. But it's funny, when you're younger, I think all the challenges you meet in life are surmountable. You think you're unbreakable. You think nothing can stop you. You believe you can achieve your dreams, and you don't reach a point in your life where anything can stop you until suddenly it does. And it seems for every project, everything I've undertaken in my life, I've given my heart and soul, the shirt off my back. And for the 99% of people that have supported it and endorsed it, there's always been one person who has gone out of their way to destroy that project. I could quote so many, but I shan't. I can reflect on one, this amazing disability and conservation park for which I spent years designing, implementing, self-funding, to the point of actually buying the site, putting in for planning application, getting lottery grant applications in. Through all the time I was on site, we had one person who did everything in their power to completely wreck, destroy, manipulate and ruin everything I was setting out to achieve. And it was only the fact that one day or one night returning back from London, I was hit head on by a big Arctic lorry and badly injured. I spent 9 months as a recluse, living in the middle of nowhere in a little gamekeeper's cottage, and during that time everything was taken away from me, including the project, the business, everything. I've always fought back, I've always bounced back, and I guess at the time that I went to Africa, I had a lot of the things I wanted. I had a successful book, I had a successful sports career, the business was, well, it was outstandingly successful. It was also a millstone around my neck, because it was crippling me with the amount of hours I was working and the cost of running such a business, even though it is the love of my life at that time. But then I suppose music has been really the only thing that has kept me alive, kept me pushing forward, and been the heart and soul of my lifeblood. Anyway, for whatever reason, and I know it was initially seen Bob Geldof's video about the Horn of Africa crisis, I gave up everything, I went to Africa. It will take me the whole of life to talk about Africa and deal with the events of Africa. It's impossible to describe how it was. Also emotionally, I don't think I can even cope with, what it was like. I won't even try, but I will give one example of, we look outside the door and what life is like here in the UK. And, when you're working in the slums of Africa, and you're literally seeing a village where everyone is in the shanty town, living on a rubbish dump, washing the utensils out in raw sewage, and the kids are playing on the rubbish dump. Their toys are used syringes, and they're all scraping for food and living in poverty and beyond your wildest and worst imagination. And it is horrendous. And just a Photoshop of that image is enough, but to live it, breathe it and survive in it for the best part of 3 years, well, that's why I shan't go into that today. But let's look at what post-traumatic stress disorder is, or my situation, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a combination of not minor but major trauma events, one after another over a number of years, and in my case a total of 26 events over a 12-year period. And it's taken these last 4 years with my therapist and the support team to unpick all the minor or small episodes and get closure on them. I'm not going to read through the entire list. We will be here the rest of the day, and I don't want to make this too depressing, but I will, I'm looking at the list here and referencing it. Going back over the last 12 years, my girlfriend, quite a few years back, came home from holiday. She'd been bitten by a mosquito, which was unfortunately carrying a serious infection, and now from fit and healthy to passing away in a matter of 4 days. That was 3 days after my father had died suddenly, which was a great shock. And I suppose one of the things I can't forgive myself for is never getting home in time to say goodbye or to hold his hand. And it was only afterwards, in what has happened to me, I began to learn about his own experiences with mental health trauma, what he went through the war and through D-Day, up to the time he was badly injured. And again, that's something I shall cover in my book. As I said, I became a recluse after having the serious road crash. I had years of overworking and virtually living rough in a run-down shack in the middle of nowhere. I had a cancer scare, which lucky it wasn't, but it was something else which wasn't very nice. And I had an operation to repair a broken nose, which went wrong and has left me with problems for the rest of my life, which I have to put up with. The overwork and the stress and the financial situation before I went to Africa was hard enough. Relationships had been a disaster. I got married only to find that my wife was having an affair, and that ended in a messy divorce. 2009 I was diagnosed with depression. As I say, taking the aid convoy to Africa, I had 2.5, 3 years of the worst threat and intimidation, extortion, violence, racism, anything anyone could ever imagine. When I came home, I can't recount the first 18 months of that experience. It did cost me everything. I lost my house, my career, my life, my livelihood, my business, and literally did again end up with just a shirt on my back. I have so much to deal with in day-to-day life, but I guess it's the desire to survive and see justice. I won't give up on it. I'm one of the many still fighting the DWP for disability discrimination, and what they did to me, the way they treated me, the same they treated so many thousands of others out there. And nothing's going to stop me taking them to court. They've taken away legal aid, fine. They're trying to change the human rights bill so we can't sue the government, fine. But justice must prevail. I mentioned last week, I still got this case where the horrendous harassment and stalking and threat on life, and that's ongoing, and I need to deal with that. The bank had no interest in mental health disability. They didn't understand it, they didn't believe in it, and they evicted me from my own property of 10 years. I've got that to deal with. And yet with everything else, I've tried to get on with life, in returning home and fighting 15 months for my new partner to be with me. The last thing I expected, that I was being scammed, and this person was just in it for a British work visa, and when they got here they used me as a means of getting here, expected to be waited on hand and foot and everything paid for, and as soon as they could possibly get out, they did. And during the time they were with me, I was subjected to some fairly horrendous mental and physical abuse, and It was only the fact that it was witnessed by some of my support group that it became public knowledge, and family intervened. It has been an impossible few years. For the first 2 years, I didn't cope. I couldn't cope. You know, I'd spend half the day screaming at the walls, getting absolutely paralytic at night, not because I wanted to, but I needed to drown the pain, and if I didn't drown the pain, it was like falling down a deep shaft to nowhere, and you had to find some way to numb the pain and hang on to the sides, otherwise you're never going to come back. I've tried self-harming, I've tried or attempted suicide, I've often thought about suicide, but how do you explain that to somebody who's not seen or experienced it? Because the pain or the numbness or the experience during the daytime is too much to bear. Worse still, the nights when you have no control, when the mind takes over, and the experiences are very, very traumatic, very real, vivid, impossible to accept. Sometimes it's even during the daytime the mind takes over and you switch off and you crash, and when you wake up you're not on the same planet. I'm just looking at, I mean, I've only touched on a few of the many events, looking down at my notes here, and you know, it seems hard to believe. You know, like last year I had 9 months trapped in one room in my house, barely able to make coffee because I was so traumatized and intimidated and vulnerable. The only thing that has kept me alive is my music, and it was the counselling support and the therapy that persuaded me that I needed to build a foundation on something that I loved, was passionate about, was an important part of my life, and music was that. And for the last year I've used my music to rebuild a part of my life, only the foundation. Just because I've started talking about it again and started being more public and doing things, it doesn't mean I'm okay, that I'm back to normal. It will be years before I deal with a lot of the issues. I have got closure on one or two things, but there's still a mountain to climb. It's just that I'm no longer prepared to stand still. In fact, I don't believe you can stand still. I think you either move forward or you slide back, and the more you let go and slide back, the more the mud in the gutter holds on to you, and you lose the belief, the self-respect, the personal consideration. For me, I gradually became used to the idea of accepting who I was, my vulnerability, the way I looked. My true friends around me supported me, gave me a lot of strength. And yet, for all this time, the things I'm still having to deal with are the trauma that comes from those who don't accept mental health illness exists. It's when you get somebody who not only does not accept it, but attacks you behind your back again and again and again, and runs you down and talks about you and says bad things. And as we talk, we're able to introduce one of the cats. Hopefully is going to come and join me, and the cat's actually been you're going to run off. The cats have been another thing that have kept me alive and company, you know, and that's another thing I've often talked about. This is a very, very lonely life. People refuse or decline to accept who you are or talk to you because they think mental health illness is something that is infectious, that is contagious, that can do them damage, and it's not. You know, it just means that for whatever reason, people with this illness have been through a very, very traumatic life that has affected them very deeply. And just because I try to be my best and try to be different, it doesn't mean, you know, I'm a bad person. I'm just damaged inside. you know, there's so many things that I still want to do, but it's finding the strength to do it. I have loved working on these movie events. I'm always having to hold back from taking on too much, and sometimes, yeah, I feel perhaps I do take on too much again, but it's live or die, you know. I love the small events we're already doing at the Oak Tavern. We're already planning events for the south side of town, something a little bit different again, which will be fundraising events. We're talking at the moment to the team at Lost of Town Football Club about doing some support events for them where we can raise money for the club and at the same time for mental health. So very much a 50-50 partnership, which would be brilliant. We are looking at next year doing big open air gigs. There's so much more, you know, and I will try my best to support and cope and share what I'm doing with people. What I can't stand or accept is where people take advantage of my goodwill and then abuse that trust. And that has happened again and again in my life. Yeah, I'm suppose I wouldn't like to say gullible. I do wear my heart on my sleeve. I do see the best in people, and I am shocked sometimes when I see that life sometimes is heartless and cruel and downright evil. But I truly believe that 99% of people are good and genuine and honest and want the best. And I think that in Lowestoft we are trying to rebuild a community and an awareness and an understanding, and I'm very proud of a number of people, and I'm very proud of the friends that support me in what I'm doing. I have to laugh. The cats are playing in the window now, chasing God knows what up and down the window. I'm going to finish very shortly. It's just to say that, you know, life must continue. I can't change who I am. I will always learn the hard way who is not right for me. I've made a promise this week to deal with certain things I must do. Is to send out the offer to venues to prepare and plan for the new gigs, to tackle the person in my life that has been so toxic and done me so much harm, even though it's a member of my family, and I'm fearful of what might be the outcome, the backlash. It has to be done because I can't survive in this sort of toxic environment where I know I'm being talked about in such a bad way. And again, it's the counselling support that has made the difference. Not necessarily made me strong enough to be better, but realise that I have to stand up for myself, and I hope in doing so this will encourage so many other people to do the same. They gave me a list a while back of things that are my rules, and which I have the right to, and I'm going to read these out, and I'll hold it up for a second or two. I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the screen at all, but if that's readable, I'll read that. It says, I have the right to state my own needs and set my own priorities as a person independent of any roles I may assume in life. I have the right to be treated with respect as an intelligent, capable and equal human being. I have a right to express my feelings, personal opinions and values. I have the right to say yes or no for myself. I have the right to make mistakes and change my mind if I desire to. I have the right to say no, I do not understand, and for that to be accepted. I have the right to ask for what I want in life because that is my right also. I have the right to decline responsibility for other people's problems. I have the right not to be dependent on others or for their approval of my actions. I have the right to say who has permission to enter my house and my life. I have the right to say no to begging, borrowing and anything that is emotional blackmail. I have the right to decide who are my true friends and family. I have the right to treat others in the same way they treat me. I have the right to ask for love, respect, loyalty, understanding, trust, compassion, honesty and commitment, because that is something I will give equally in all measures to people who are my friends. And I have a right to stand up for myself. Saying no, I mean no. There has been recently something that's come up which I declined to talk about online. I was just very saddened that someone I trusted business-wise to do something genuine let me down, and I tackled them about it, and I was disappointed in the response back. It was very much a like it or lump it response, and fine, you know, I've learnt the hard way in life. I have my rules to live by. Therapy is leading me down the right path. I'm going to stand up for myself and all the others who can't speak out. A lot of people say, how do you have the strength to talk about what you're doing? I'm no different from anyone out there who talks about their experiences, or in this case don't. You just need to have around you people who care about you, who understand you, who know that you are genuine, will respect you and value what you're trying to do. And that's all. You know, I believe in the good of the community. I want to try and do something. I've dedicated the rest of my life to trying to make a difference. I shan't say it was a case of succeed or fail. It's a case of succeed or succeed to a lesser extent. And it's having the right positive mental attitude long term. I was quite upset when somebody recently commented about they didn't want to be with people who were suffering from mental health disability because they were always depressing or down or negative. Well, when you're in our shoes and when you're suffering from any form of mental health disability, that can be seen as quite offensive, and not only that, it can be seen as very threatening and damaging. And I just simply say that when you're talking about mental health, you have to be very careful in what you say and how you say it. You know, it's positive mental attitude is needed, but there are levels of being positive, and one of the things I can't accept is this all you need is a kick up the backside approach, because that's what started a major trigger event for me a couple of years back, and when a member of my family who doesn't understand mental health, doesn't accept mental health, said there's nothing wrong with me, all you need is a good kick up the backside, and continued by tearing into me, reducing me to tears and driving me to the point of suicide. It was only that night that I actually got drunk, you know, that stopped me from doing so. I needed to drown the pain. I hope you can see one of my cats in the background. That's Crumble, one of 4 rescued cats that I've got, and they're absolutely adorable. But anyway, time has gone on. It's already been half an hour today. I hope you've enjoyed me talking to you. I'm just being myself. I'm being honest. I'm just sharing what it's like, you know, living with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I understand so many now, you know, what they're going through, and I also understand what our parents and grandparents went through, and the trauma they must have experienced, and they must have been horrific, and they didn't have the support then. I refuse to accept that the support we need now will be taken away from us by lack of funding. We have so many qualified and respected people that, you know, around us, and I will do everything I can over the coming years to try and make a difference. That's my story. So thanks very much for listening, and talk to you again next week. Okay, bye now.